So when I started to work on well-being, I asked, are there reliable ways of producing more happiness, more well-being in people? And from the Buddha to modern pop psychology, there have been about 200 suggestions about what makes people lastingly happier. So what we do is we take these suggestions, we boil them down to simple instructions, and on my website, AuthenticHappiness.org, occasionally there's a link that goes up. And if you press it, which says exercises, and if you go to that link, it says, Dr. Seligman would like to find out what builds well-being and what's a placebo. And so if you agree, we're going to give you one exercise. It might be a placebo. It might be something that actively works. We're going to ask you to do it for a week. You'll report it to us. And then we're going to give you tests for the next 6 months to see if it works. So we have found over the last 5 years about 12 exercises that reliably work. So I'll just tell you one of them. Every night for the next week, before you go to sleep, write down 3 things that went well today and why they went well. They don't need to be big things. They could be things like a beautiful sunset or an excellent lecture. And that's all you do. You write down 3 things that went well before you go to sleep. And then we measure people for the next 6 months. And we find out against placebo, against controls, that people who every day, right for a week, write down 3 things they like doing that went well today, that 6 months later, they're happier, their life satisfaction is higher, and they're less depressed. Second thing we find about this, it's addicting. And this, by the way, is very important. How many of you are psychotherapists? Yeah, well, quite a number of you. I've been a psychotherapist for most of my life. And the dirty little secret of psychotherapy is that what we teach in psychotherapy doesn't last. It's like dieting. And the reason is we're taking what people are worst at and trying to correct it. And there's a huge amount of backsliding. And the way we measure, when we rigorously measure the effectiveness of psychotherapy, is how long it takes after psychotherapy before the skills melt back to 0. Well, the nice thing about positive psychology is that these are self-maintaining. They're self-reinforcing. They don't go away. So I started doing the 3 good things. By the way, I should tell you, I take my own medicine. I'm a pessimist and a depressive. And so when someone suggests an exercise to break up depression, I do it on myself. If it works on me, then I give it to my wife and 7 children. If it works on them, I give it to my graduate students to do outcome studies. And if it works in outcome studies, then we put it on the web. So the 3 good things, I started doing it more than 10 years ago, and it's addicting. It turns out it's fun to do. It's much better to go to sleep thinking about 3 good things that happened today than to think about the fight you had with your dean. You sleep better, and it turns out it's self-maintaining. And that's true in general of the positive emotion exercises that work. So that's one example of that P can actually be built. Let's take engagement, being in flow. So I'm going to do an exercise with you now. I can only do half of it. Okay. Remember I said that flow increases when your highest strengths meet the highest challenges that come your way. So close your eyes. Everyone close their eyes. Think of something that you have to do at work or at school that you don't like doing. Okay? Open your eyes. Everyone is able to think of things like that. Now, what you haven't done is gone to the website, AuthenticHappiness.org, and taking the signature strength test. That will tell you what your 5 highest strengths are. So you haven't done that part of the exercise. But had you done it, then your question would be, Next week, do that thing at school or at work that you don't like doing using your highest strength. And here's what happens. I'll just give you a couple of examples. So one of my students was a bagger at grocery stores. Do you have people who put things into bags at grocery stores? She was working her way through university. She didn't like doing it. Terrible job. She took the signature strengths test, and her highest strength was social intelligence. So her job was to recraft bagging groceries to use her social intelligence more. So what she decided she would do was to make the encounter with her the social highlight of every customer's day. Now, notice a couple of things about that. One, she's going to fail a lot of the time. You often don't notice the person who's bagging your groceries. But secondly, she's taking what she is best at in life, her social intelligence, and she's putting it on offer constantly. And what you find when you do this is that life satisfaction goes markedly up, and depression goes down, and the groceries aren't as heavy anymore. So I encourage you to go to the website, take the signature strengths test, and then do the thing you don't like doing at school or at work using your highest strength. A couple of more things to say about what's come out of the work on signature strengths. I'm very interested in post-traumatic growth. You've all heard about post-traumatic stress, but it turns out most people who go through awful events grow. Your president and I were talking about in botany whether or not if you stress plants early in life, are there conditions under which they become stronger plants? Well, I'm interested in who grows and why they grow. So on our website, about 2,000 new people sign up every day. So I put a link which had a questionnaire of the 15 worst things that could happen to people. And I asked people to take the questionnaire. And in the course of a month, we found about 1,700 people who had awful things happen to them: raped, tortured, held captive, lethal illness, death of a spouse, death of a child, and the like. And we asked the question about who grew. So it turns out we were able to ask, when you're exposed to awful events, who grew? Well, interestingly, it turned out that people who have one terrible event are stronger and have higher well-being than the general population. People who have two awful events has more well-being than people who have had one. And people who have had three terrible events have higher strength and well-being than people who have had two. And then we asked the question, what signature strengths led particularly to growth? And they were these 5: religiousness, gratitude, kindness, hope, and bravery. So that's the kind of thing we can find out by looking at signature strengths.